Imagine this. You're scrolling through your phone on a Tuesday morning in Manhattan, and suddenly every news alert, every social media post, every text from your friends is screaming about the same crisis. Your heart starts racing. Your palms get sweaty. Within minutes, you've gone from drinking your morning coffee to feeling like the world is ending. Sound familiar? Welcome to the modern panic machine. And trust me, you're not alone in feeling like your brain has completely lost its mind during times like these. Whether it's a market crash, a natural disaster, a pandemic, or just the latest social media outrage, our minds seem hardwired to go into full-blown crisis mode at the drop of a hat. But here's the thing that might surprise you. Over 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius was dealing with the exact same human tendency to panic, and he figured out some incredibly practical ways to keep his head on straight when everyone around him was losing theirs. And the best part? His methods work just as well in our modern world of 24/7 news cycles and social media hysteria. Now, before we dive into his ancient wisdom, let's be honest about what panic actually does to us. When we panic, we're essentially throwing our ability to think clearly right out the window. It's like our rational mind takes a vacation and leaves our emotional mind in charge of making all the important decisions. And let's face it, our emotional mind isn't exactly known for its stellar judgment. Think about the last time you saw people panic buying toilet paper, or when everyone was frantically refreshing their stock portfolios, or when your entire office was buzzing with anxiety about the latest company rumors. In those moments, people weren't making logical decisions based on facts. They were reacting from a place of pure emotion, and more often than not, those reactions made things worse, not better. Marcus Aurelius understood something crucial that we often forget in our modern world. When we're faced with a crisis, our job isn't to add to the chaos. Our job is to be the calm in the storm. But how do we do that when everything around us feels like it's falling apart? The answer lies in understanding exactly why our brains go haywire during uncertain times, and then learning some surprisingly simple techniques to keep our mental equilibrium intact. Because here's what Marcus Aurelius knew that most people today don't. The crisis itself isn't usually the real problem. The real problem is how we think about the crisis. Over the next few minutes, we're going to explore some game-changing insights that will help you stay grounded when the world feels like it's spinning out of control. We'll discover why everything that seems unprecedented actually isn't. Learn how to prepare for challenges without losing your sanity, and figure out how to maintain your inner peace even when everyone around you is completely freaking out. This isn't just philosophical theory, by the way. These are practical tools that you can use the next time your news feed explodes, your workplace goes into crisis mode, or your social circle starts spiraling into collective anxiety. Ready to learn how to be the person who stays calm while everyone else is losing it? The journey begins with understanding a profound truth that Marcus Aurelius discovered during his own turbulent times, and it might completely change how you see every crisis that comes your way. 1. The truth about unprecedented times. Spoiler, they're not. Here's something that might blow your mind. That unprecedented crisis you're worried about has happened before. Multiple times. In fact, Marcus Aurelius had a fascinating insight about this that completely changes how we can think about any challenge we're facing today. Let me paint you a picture. It's 2008, and Sarah, a financial advisor in Chicago, is watching her clients panic as the stock market crashes. Everyone's calling it an unprecedented financial crisis. People are lined up outside banks, Retirement accounts are vanishing overnight, and her phone won't stop ringing with terrified investors. This feels like the end of the financial world as they know it. Fast forward to 2020, and her nephew Jake, a restaurant manager in Brooklyn, is watching his industry collapse during lockdowns. The bustling restaurant where he's worked for 5 years is suddenly empty. His staff is getting laid off, and the news is full of stories about restaurants closing permanently. Again, everyone's saying it's unprecedented. Then in 2023, his sister Emma, a tech worker in San Francisco, is dealing with massive layoffs in her industry. Companies that seemed invincible are cutting thousands of jobs. Her LinkedIn feed is full of open-to-work posts from colleagues she thought were untouchable. Guess what everyone's calling it? You got it. Unprecedented. You see the pattern here, right? Every generation thinks their crisis is the first of its kind, the worst thing that's ever happened, the end of the world as we know it. But Marcus Aurelius, who lived through plagues, wars, political upheaval, and personal tragedies, had a radically different perspective. He wrote something in his personal journal that should be required reading for anyone living in our anxiety-filled modern world. No matter what happens, keep this in mind. It's the same old thing, from one end of the world to the other. It fills the history books, ancient and modern, and the cities and the houses too. Nothing new at all. Familiar, transient. Think about that for a moment. Marcus Aurelius is telling us that what we're experiencing right now, whatever it is, has happened countless times before. The details might be different, the technology might be different, but the fundamental human experience, that's been repeating itself for thousands of years. This isn't just philosophical theory. Marcus Aurelius was literally running the Roman Empire during one of the most challenging periods in its history. He dealt with plague, war, political intrigue, and economic problems. If anyone had the right to claim their situation was unprecedented, it was him. Instead, he chose to see his challenges as part of the eternal human condition. Lost your job? So have millions of people throughout history, and they figured out how to rebuild their lives. During the Great Depression, unemployment hit 25% in America. People lost everything, but they didn't give up. The 2008 financial crisis seemed like the end of the world, but here we are, still standing. Dealing with a health crisis, humans have been battling diseases and recovering from them since the beginning of time. The 1918 Spanish flu killed millions, but society didn't collapse. HIV/AIDS seemed insurmountable in the 1980s, but medical advances turned it from a death sentence into a manageable condition. Worried about political chaos? Every generation has thought their political situation was uniquely terrible. The Civil War literally tore America apart, but the country reunited. The 1960s saw unprecedented social upheaval and civil unrest, but led to important social progress. Watergate shook people's faith in government, but democracy survived. Concerned about economic uncertainty? Markets have been rising and falling for centuries. The Panic of 1837 led to a 7-year depression. The 1970s brought stagflation that economists said was impossible. Black Monday in 1987 saw the Dow Jones drop 22% in a single day. Each time, people thought it was different, worse, unprecedented. Here's what's really happening when we think our situation is unprecedented. We're losing sight of the bigger picture. We're so focused on the immediate drama, the 24/7 news coverage, the social media panic, that we forget we're part of a much larger human story. Take the pandemic, for example. While COVID-19 was indeed a new virus, pandemics themselves are as old as human civilization. We've dealt with the Spanish flu, the Black Death, SARS, MERS, H1N1, Ebola. Each time, people thought it was the end of the world. Each time, humanity adapted and moved forward. Even our modern anxieties about technology aren't new. When the printing press was invented, religious leaders worried it would destroy authority and lead to chaos. When radio became popular, people predicted it would ruin family life. When television arrived, experts warned it would destroy reading and conversation. When the internet emerged, people feared it would isolate us and destroy real relationships. Sound familiar? Marcus Aurelius understood something profound about human nature. We tend to think our current moment is uniquely significant, but we're actually experiencing what he called archetypal storylines. The same basic patterns of human experience playing out over and over again, just with different characters and settings. This isn't meant to minimize what you're going through. Your struggles are real, your concerns are valid, and your emotions matter. But understanding that you're part of a larger human pattern can be incredibly liberating. It means you're not alone in this experience. It means others have faced similar challenges and found ways through them. It means this too shall pass, just like it always has. The reason this perspective is so powerful is that it takes the unprecedented fear out of our current situation. When something feels completely new and alien, our minds go into panic mode because we don't have a framework for dealing with it. But when we recognize that we're dealing with a familiar pattern in a new costume, we can tap into the collective wisdom of everyone who's faced similar challenges before us. This shift in perspective naturally leads us to another crucial insight that Marcus Aurelius discovered. Understanding why everything feels so scary in the moment, and why that fear tends to fade as we adapt to new circumstances. 2. Why everything feels scary until tomorrow. You know what's fascinating about fear? It has this incredible ability to make temporary situations feel permanent and manageable challenges feel impossible. But Marcus Aurelius discovered something remarkable about this psychological trick our minds play on us, and it might completely change how you handle your next crisis. Let me tell you about David, a marketing manager in Denver. In March 2020, when his company announced they were going remote indefinitely, he was terrified. He'd never worked from home before, didn't know how to manage his team virtually, and was convinced his career was over. He spent sleepless nights imagining worst-case scenarios. Getting fired, losing his house, his kids having to change schools. The uncertainty felt overwhelming and permanent. Fast forward to today, and David laughs about those early pandemic fears. Not only did he adapt to remote work, but he actually prefers it now. He's more productive, has a better work-life balance, and his team is performing better than ever. What felt like an insurmountable challenge 3 years ago is now just normal life. This is exactly what Marcus Aurelius was talking about when he observed the transient nature of all things. He understood that what feels scary and overwhelming today will inevitably become familiar and manageable tomorrow. It's not magic. It's how humans are wired. Think about your own life for a moment. Remember starting your first job? That probably felt terrifying. You didn't know anyone, didn't understand the company culture, and weren't sure if you could handle the responsibilities. Maybe you spent your first week convinced you'd made a huge mistake. But within a few months, you knew where the good coffee was, had figured out the office politics, and felt comfortable in your role. Or consider learning to drive. Remember how overwhelming that felt initially? You had to coordinate your hands, feet, and eyes while watching for other drivers, pedestrians, and traffic signs. It seemed impossible that you'd ever feel natural behind the wheel. Yet now you probably drive while having conversations, listening to music, or thinking about your day. Your brain adapted, and what once felt scary became automatic. This is what psychologists call hedonic adaptation, our remarkable ability to adjust to new circumstances and return to a baseline level of comfort. But Marcus Aurelius understood this concept 2,000 years before modern psychology gave it a name. He saw that everything in life follows the same pattern: initial disruption, gradual adaptation, eventual normalization. The key insight here is understanding why things feel so scary initially. It's not usually because they're actually more dangerous than familiar situations. It's because they're unknown. Our brains are prediction machines, constantly trying to anticipate what's coming next so we can prepare for it. When we encounter something new, our prediction system goes haywire, and that uncertainty triggers our fear response. Take Maria, a freelance graphic designer in Miami. When Hurricane Irma was approaching in 2017, she was paralyzed with anxiety. She'd never experienced a major hurricane before, had no idea what to expect, and spent days obsessing over worst-case scenarios. The unknown felt absolutely terrifying. But by the time Hurricane Ian threatened the area in 2022, Maria's response was completely different. She calmly executed her hurricane preparation checklist, secured her home, and evacuated when recommended. Same type of storm, same potential dangers, but her fear level was dramatically lower because the situation was no longer unknown. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote about the familiar, transient nature of all experiences. Even the scariest situations become familiar once we've been through them. And here's the beautiful part. They also become transient, meaning they pass. The Stoics had a profound understanding of what they called the eternal dance of change. They observed that everything in the universe is constantly in motion, constantly transforming. Nothing stays the same forever, not the good times, and not the bad times either. This isn't just philosophical poetry. It's a practical tool for managing fear. When you're in the middle of a scary situation, your brain tricks you into thinking it will last forever. That's why people say things like, "I'll never get through this," or "things will never be the same." But Marcus Aurelius would gently remind you that this is an illusion. Everything changes, always. Consider the concept of yin and yang that Marcus Aurelius references. The idea that opposing forces are interconnected and interdependent. Difficult times are balanced by easier times. Periods of uncertainty are followed by periods of stability. Moments of fear give way to moments of confidence. This isn't wishful thinking. It's the natural rhythm of life. The practical application of this insight is powerful. When you're facing something that feels scary and overwhelming, remind yourself that your current emotional state is temporary. The situation might be challenging, but your fear of it will diminish as you adapt. What feels impossible today will feel manageable once you've developed the skills and knowledge to handle it. This doesn't mean you should ignore legitimate concerns or avoid necessary preparation. Marcus Aurelius wasn't advocating for reckless optimism. Instead, he was suggesting that we separate the actual challenge from our fear of the challenge. Often, the fear is much worse than the reality. Here's a practical exercise. Think about something you're currently worried about. Now ask yourself, what would this situation look like if I had already successfully navigated it? Imagine yourself 6 months or a year from now, looking back on today's concerns. How different would your perspective be? Understanding the temporary nature of fear and the adaptable nature of humans leads us naturally to our next crucial insight: how to prepare for challenges without letting anxiety take over your life. 3. How to prepare without losing your mind. There's a fine line between being prepared and being paranoid, and Marcus Aurelius understood this distinction better than almost anyone. He knew that rational preparation is wise, but panic-driven overreaction actually makes things worse, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Let me introduce you to Lisa, a nurse practitioner in Seattle. When COVID-19 first hit, she did something smart. She stocked up on a reasonable amount of supplies, made sure her family had what they needed for a few weeks, and created a plan for different scenarios. She was prepared, but she wasn't panicked. Then there was her neighbor, Greg. Greg bought 47 packages of toilet paper, cleared out 3 stores of hand sanitizer, and spent $2,000 on canned goods that his family would never eat. He wasn't preparing. He was hoarding out of fear. And his panic buying meant that Lisa's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chun, couldn't find basic supplies when she needed them. This is exactly what Marcus Aurelius warned against. In his writings, he emphasizes that our actions should serve the common good, not just our individual fears. When we prepare rationally, we're being responsible. When we prepare frantically, we're often making the problem worse for everyone. So, how do you tell the difference? Marcus Aurelius would say it comes down to whether your preparation is based on rational assessment or emotional reaction. Rational preparation asks questions like, what are the most likely scenarios? What do I actually need? How can I prepare without harming others? Emotional preparation just screams, get everything now before it's gone. Take financial preparation, for example. After the 2008 crash, Tom, a teacher in Phoenix, decided to build an emergency fund. He started setting aside a small amount each month, gradually building up 3 months of expenses. This was rational preparation. He learned from what happened and took reasonable steps to protect his family. His brother-in-law, however, became obsessed with financial catastrophe. He pulled all his money out of the stock market, bought gold bars, and started stockpiling cash under his mattress. He was so focused on preparing for the next crash that he missed years of market recovery. His fear-based preparation actually hurt his financial security. Marcus Aurelius understood that true preparation requires what the Stoics called preferred indifference, things that are generally good to have but don't determine your happiness or security. Having some extra food, money, or supplies is preferable to having none, but your peace of mind shouldn't depend on having them. The key is approaching preparation with what Marcus Aurelius called reserve clause thinking. This means making reasonable preparations while accepting that you can't control every outcome. You do what you can, then you let go of the rest. It's the difference between saying, I'll prepare for what I can handle versus, I must prepare for every possible disaster. Consider Jennifer, a small business owner in Atlanta. When supply chain issues started affecting her industry, she took several smart steps. She diversified her suppliers, built relationships with local vendors, and increased her inventory of critical items. But she didn't try to stockpile everything or change her entire business model out of fear. She prepared for likely scenarios, not every possible catastrophe. This approach worked because it was based on rational assessment rather than emotional reaction. She asked herself practical questions. What disruptions are most likely in my industry? What can I reasonably control? What would actually help my business versus what would just make me feel better? Marcus Aurelius also emphasized that preparation should strengthen the community, not weaken it. When you prepare in ways that help others, you're following Stoic principles. When your preparation comes at others' expense, you're acting from fear rather than wisdom. Look at how different communities responded to various crises. In some neighborhoods, people shared resources, checked on elderly neighbors, and coordinated their preparation efforts. These communities became stronger and more resilient. In other areas, people hoarded supplies, price gouged their neighbors, and looked out only for themselves. These communities became more fragmented and vulnerable. The Stoic approach to preparation also involves preparing your mind, not just your circumstances. Marcus Aurelius spent as much time strengthening his mental resilience as he did managing external threats. He practiced visualizing challenges, reflecting on his values, and building his capacity to stay calm under pressure. This mental preparation is often more valuable than physical preparation. You can't stockpile enough supplies to handle every possible crisis, but you can develop the mental tools to handle uncertainty, adapt to change, and make good decisions under pressure. These skills serve you in every situation, not just the specific disasters you're worried about. Here's a practical framework for Stoic preparation. First, identify the most likely challenges you might face, not the most dramatic ones, but the most probable ones. Job loss, illness, economic downturns, and relationship problems are far more common than apocalyptic scenarios. Second, take reasonable steps to prepare for these likely challenges. Build an emergency fund, maintain your health, develop your skills, and strengthen your relationships. These preparations help with a wide range of potential problems. Third, accept that you can't prepare for everything. Focus on building general resilience rather than specific defenses. The ability to adapt, learn quickly, and stay calm under pressure will serve you better than any stockpile of supplies. Finally, remember that your preparation should serve the greater good. Ask yourself, does my preparation help or hurt my community? Am I being responsible or just feeding my own fears? Would Marcus Aurelius approve of my approach? The goal isn't to eliminate all risk from your life. That's impossible. The goal is to be reasonably prepared while maintaining your peace of mind and contributing to the common good. This balanced approach naturally leads us to examine another crucial factor that often drives us toward panic rather than preparation: the role of media in shaping our perception of reality. 4. The media trick that's making you anxious. Here's something that might shock you. The media companies feeding you information all day aren't primarily in the business of informing you. They're in the business of capturing and selling your attention. And Marcus Aurelius, who lived long before cable news and social media, understood something crucial about how this dynamic distorts our perception of reality. Let me tell you about Rachel, a marketing executive in Boston. Every morning, she'd wake up and immediately check her phone. News alerts, social media updates, email notifications. Within minutes of opening her eyes, Her brain was flooded with information about crises, conflicts, and catastrophes from around the world. By the time she got to work, she felt anxious, overwhelmed, and convinced that the world was falling apart. Rachel didn't realize she was experiencing what Marcus Aurelius would have recognized as a distorted view of reality. She was seeing the world through a lens specifically designed to amplify drama, conflict, and fear, because those emotions keep people engaged, and engagement equals profit. Think about it. When was the last time you saw a breaking news alert that said, "Everything is basically fine today," or "Most people went to work, came home safely, and had dinner with their families"? Never, right? That's not because those things aren't happening. They're happening millions of times every day. But they don't grab your attention, so they don't generate revenue. Media companies have discovered something that Marcus Aurelius understood about human psychology. We're naturally drawn to threats and conflicts because our brains evolved to prioritize survival-relevant information. In ancient times, this served us well. If there was a predator nearby or a rival tribe approaching, we needed to know immediately. But in our modern world, this ancient wiring is being exploited. News organizations compete for your attention by making everything seem urgent, unprecedented, and personally threatening. They've turned the entire world into your immediate neighborhood, flooding your ancient threat detection system with dangers you can't actually do anything about. Consider Marcus, a software developer in Portland. He used to spend hours each day consuming political news, getting increasingly angry and anxious about events happening thousands of miles away. He'd argue with strangers on social media, share outraged posts, and go to bed each night feeling like democracy was crumbling. But here's the thing. None of this consumption or engagement actually improved his life or his community. Marcus Aurelius would have seen this clearly. In his meditations, he repeatedly emphasizes focusing on what's within our control and not wasting energy on things we can't influence. He would have recognized that spending hours consuming distant conflicts and political drama is exactly the opposite of Stoic wisdom. The media trick works because it creates what psychologists call availability bias. We judge how common or likely something is based on how easily we can remember examples of it. If you're constantly seeing stories about plane crashes, you'll overestimate the danger of flying, even though statistically you're safer in a plane than in your car. If you're constantly seeing stories about crime, economic collapse, or social unrest, you'll overestimate how common and threatening these things actually are. This is why people often feel like the world is getting worse, even when most objective measures show it's getting better. Steven Pinker's research demonstrates that violence, poverty, disease, and illiteracy have all declined dramatically over the past century, but you'd never know that from consuming daily news. The media focuses on the exceptions, not the trends. Sarah, a teacher in Denver, discovered this firsthand when she decided to take a news fast for 1 month. She stopped checking news websites, unfollowed news accounts on social media, and avoided political discussions. At first, she felt anxious about being uninformed, but gradually, something interesting happened. Her overall anxiety decreased, she slept better, and she had more mental energy for the things that actually mattered in her daily life. During her news fast, Sarah realized that most of the urgent stories she'd been following had no practical impact on her life. The political scandals, international conflicts, and economic predictions that had consumed her attention were largely irrelevant to her actual challenges and opportunities. Marcus Aurelius understood this principle deeply. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Part of exercising that power means being selective about what information you allow into your consciousness. This doesn't mean becoming ignorant or disengaged. Marcus Aurelius was deeply involved in governing the Roman Empire. He wasn't advocating for complete withdrawal from public life, but he understood the difference between staying informed and becoming addicted to information consumption. Here's a practical approach inspired by Stoic principles. Instead of consuming news passively throughout the day, choose specific times to get informed. Maybe spend 15 minutes in the morning reading one trusted news source, focusing on information that's actually relevant to your life and community. More importantly, balance your information diet. For every story about problems and conflicts, seek out information about solutions and progress. For every global crisis you read about, learn about something positive happening in your local community. This isn't about ignoring reality. It's about getting a more accurate picture of reality. Marcus Aurelius also emphasized the importance of focusing on your immediate environment, the people and situations you can actually influence. Instead of spending hours worrying about political developments in Washington, spend that time volunteering in your community, helping a neighbor, or improving your own skills and relationships. The goal isn't to be uninformed, but to be intentionally informed. Ask yourself, is this information helping me make better decisions or take better actions? If not, it's probably just feeding anxiety rather than serving any useful purpose. This shift from passive information consumption to intentional engagement naturally leads us to another crucial insight: how to maintain your inner peace when the people around you are caught up in the very media-driven panic we've been discussing. 5. What to do when everyone around you is freaking out. Picture this: you've done the work. You've gained historical perspective. You understand that your fears are temporary. You've prepared rationally without panicking, and you've stopped letting the media drive your anxiety. You're feeling calm, centered, and rational. Then you walk into your office, family gathering, or friend group, and everyone around you is completely losing their minds. This is where Marcus Aurelius's wisdom becomes absolutely essential. Because staying calm when you're alone is one thing. Staying calm when you're surrounded by panicking people is a whole different challenge. Let me tell you about Kevin, a project manager at a tech company in Austin. In early 2022, when the stock market started getting volatile and recession fears were spreading, his office became a pressure cooker of anxiety. Co-workers were constantly checking their 401k balances, sharing apocalyptic economic predictions, and having heated debates about whether to sell everything or buy more. The break room conversations were dominated by doom and gloom scenarios. Kevin had been studying Stoic philosophy for a few months, so he understood that market volatility was normal and that panic selling was usually a bad strategy. But being surrounded by anxious colleagues all day was wearing him down. Their fear was contagious, and he found himself getting pulled into their emotional spiral despite knowing better intellectually. This is exactly the situation Marcus Aurelius addressed in one of his most powerful passages. Let them scream whatever they want. Let animals dismember the soft flesh that covers you. How would any of that stop you from keeping your mind calm, reliably sizing up what's around you, and ready to make good use of whatever happens? Now, Marcus Aurelius wasn't being cruel or dismissive when he wrote this. He was pointing out a fundamental truth. Other people's emotional reactions, no matter how intense, don't have to determine your internal state. Their panic is their choice, just as your calm is yours. But how do you actually implement this when you're surrounded by freaking out people? The first step is understanding that panic is genuinely contagious. Neuroscientists have discovered that we have mirror neurons that automatically mimic the emotional states of people around us. When someone near you is anxious, your brain starts firing anxiety patterns too. This isn't a character flaw, it's human biology. Take Jennifer, a nurse in Chicago. During the height of the pandemic, she was working in an ICU where stress levels were through the roof. Doctors were snapping at each other, administrators were making contradictory demands, and some of her colleagues were having panic attacks during their shifts. The emotional chaos was as exhausting as the physical demands of the job. Jennifer discovered that she needed to create what she called emotional boundaries. Just like she wore protective equipment to prevent physical contamination, she needed mental techniques to prevent emotional contamination. She started taking 5-minute breaks every few hours to practice deep breathing and remind herself of what she could actually control in each situation. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he talked about becoming a tower of strength. You don't become strong by fighting against other people's emotions or trying to convince them to calm down. You become strong by maintaining your own center regardless of the emotional weather around you. Consider the workplace dynamics that Maria, a financial advisor in Miami, had to navigate during the 2020 market crash. Her clients were calling in panic, wanting to sell everything. Her colleagues were stressed about their own portfolios and sharing increasingly dramatic predictions about economic collapse. Even her boss was making emotional decisions instead of rational ones. Maria realized that she had two choices. She could either get swept up in the collective panic, or she could become the calm presence that others could rely on. She chose the latter, and it made all the difference, and not just for her mental health, but for her career and her clients' financial outcomes. The key insight here is that you don't need to change other people's minds to maintain your own peace. In fact, trying to talk panicking people out of their panic often backfires. When someone is in an emotional state, logical arguments usually just make them more defensive and agitated. Marcus Aurelius understood this perfectly. He wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think or do, only what you do, not to be distracted by their darkness, to run straight for the finish line, unswerving." This doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring. It means recognizing that you can be compassionate toward people without taking on their emotional state. You can offer support without getting pulled into their drama. You can be helpful without becoming hysterical. Here's a practical framework for dealing with panicking people. First, acknowledge their feelings without adopting them. You can say, "I understand you're really worried about this," without agreeing that their worry is justified or necessary. Second, focus on facts rather than emotions. When someone is spiraling, gently redirect the conversation to concrete information and practical next steps. Instead of debating whether their fears are rational, ask, what specific actions would be most helpful right now? Third, model the behavior you want to see. People are more influenced by what you do than what you say. When you stay calm, make rational decisions, and focus on constructive actions, you give others permission to do the same. Fourth, protect your own energy. You can't help anyone if you're emotionally depleted. Set boundaries around how much drama you'll engage with, And don't feel guilty about stepping away from conversations that are just feeding the panic cycle. Finally, remember that some people aren't ready to hear alternatives to their panic. Marcus Aurelius was clear about this. You can only change minds that are open to change. Don't waste your energy trying to convince people who are committed to their anxiety. This approach to handling panicking people naturally leads us to our final and most important topic: how to cultivate the kind of unshakable inner peace that allows you to remain calm no matter what chaos surrounds you. Your new superpower: staying calm in chaos. Here's the truth that Marcus Aurelius discovered over 2,000 years ago, and it's just as powerful today. Your ability to stay calm when everyone else is panicking isn't just a nice personal trait. It's literally a superpower in our modern world. Think about it. In a world where everyone is constantly reacting, constantly anxious, constantly being pulled in different directions by the latest crisis or outrage, the person who can maintain their inner peace has an enormous advantage. You make better decisions. You see opportunities that others miss. You become the person others turn to for guidance and stability. But this superpower isn't something you're born with. It's something you develop through practice. Every time you choose historical perspective over unprecedented panic, you're building this muscle. Every time you focus on what you can control instead of what you can't, you're getting stronger. Every time you resist the media's attempt to hijack your attention with manufactured urgency, you're claiming your power back. Marcus Aurelius understood that true strength isn't about controlling external circumstances. It's about maintaining your inner tranquility regardless of what's happening around you. He wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think or do. Only what you do, not to be distracted by their darkness. To run straight for the finish line, unswerving." This is your invitation to join the ranks of people who refuse to let external chaos determine their internal state. You now have the tools. You understand that every crisis has historical precedent, that fear is temporary, that rational preparation beats panic every time, that media manipulation can be resisted, and that other people's emotional reactions don't have to become yours. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. The real transformation happens when you start applying these principles in your daily life. The next time your news feed explodes with the latest unprecedented crisis, remember Marcus Aurelius's words about the same old thing. When everyone around you starts panicking, become the tower of strength that others can rely on. Your calm presence in a chaotic world isn't just good for you. It's a gift to everyone around you. When you refuse to add to the collective anxiety, when you make decisions based on wisdom rather than fear, when you focus on constructive action rather than destructive worry, you're literally making the world a better place. The ancient Stoics believed that philosophy should be practical, that wisdom should improve how we live, not just how we think. Every insight we've explored today is meant to be used, not just understood. So here's your challenge. Pick one situation in your life where you've been letting external chaos disturb your inner peace. Apply what you've learned. Stay calm when others panic. Focus on what you control. Remember that this too shall pass. If this video has helped you discover your superpower of staying calm in chaos, please hit that like button and subscribe to Stoic Vivu for more practical ancient wisdom for modern life. Share this with someone who needs to hear these insights. Together, we can create a community of people who choose wisdom over worry, action over anxiety, and peace over panic. Your journey to unshakable inner strength starts now.